Hello. So today we are going to begin with a new chapter, Applications of Psychology to Disadvantaged Group. This is an important chapter, and before we move on to the basics, we need to see what type of questions UPSC has asked previously.
Hello guys, before we start with the discussion, we just want to inform you that we have launched a very special and unique type of program which is called Excel Mains through the previous year's questions. In this program, we are going to cover the entire syllabus of GS paper 1, 2, 3 and 4. The philosophy behind this program is we are going to cover the syllabus not randomly but just by using or referring the previous year's questions themes, and the themes are extracted from the last 40 years of previous year's questions. There will be a live discussion, there will be a answer writing with the mentors, and the second program is the intense answer writing program which is called Samachar Vani Plus, in which there will be a weekly classes on 10 topics which are extremely important from the UPSC mains and prelims point of view. There will be an answer writing, there will be a questions given after each and every class based on those 10 topics. So even if you are a beginner, this is a good opportunity for you to begin with the answer writing. For any further queries, or if you wish to talk with a mentor, if you have any doubts, please drop us a message on the number given below. Thank you.
So, as we can see, the type of questions that UPSC has asked is the basic definition and its implications, like the concept definition and its implications on certain sections of the society. Okay. For example, what is relative deprivation? Explain its consequences on adolescent behavior. Explain the psychological, socio-cultural, economic consequences of belonging to a disadvantaged group. Suggest steps to educate and motivate disadvantaged groups towards development. Then, how is disadvantage related to social structure of hierarchy and discrimination? So यहाँ पे ये कास्ट के बारे में पूछ रहा है, like institutionalized discrimination. Okay, what is the relationship with capability deprivation and poverty? Discuss some major factors of educational failure among tribal communities in India. So see, this is very current related and application based questions. Okay. Why must education of the disadvantaged emphasize development of self-efficacy and intrinsic motivation? Then in 2021, what are the strategies for motivating students belonging to disadvantaged groups for their development? What are the consequences of being a member of disadvantaged group? So see, we have a direct question here. Right? So it fetches approximately 30 marks, and the questions are in the format of causes, implications, definitions. So हमें notes भी उसी format में बनाने पड़ेंगे, like the concept definition and its implications or consequences on several groups. Okay, so we'll start with the basics of disadvantage and deprivation. We need to study this because unless we understand what is disadvantage and deprivation, we will not understand its classification or its implications, consequences. Okay, so disadvantage is the result of unequal access to resources, physical, cultural, educational, societal, etc. Disadvantage is a group phenomena. Okay. Whereas deprivation is the condition or the state of being disadvantaged. It is the condition or the state that the disadvantaged faces. Now for the social disadvantage, A.K. Singh is referred to it as all the sociogenic variables that prevent or hamper the development of natural potentialities of a group is the social disadvantage. Okay, मतलब social factors जो है society में, okay, they hamper the development of the group's potential. Okay, then we'll move on to classification of deprivation, which was given by Mishra and Tripathi in 1977. So they classified deprivation into two parts. Like one was organismic versus environmental, The second was objective versus subjective. Organismic deprivation is the insufficient organic inputs which leads to tissue deficit. Okay, matlab it is like the material deprivation, food, nutrition, वो ही कम होता है जिसकी वजह से the brain and other cognitive faculties are not sufficiently developed, okay, to match those who have sufficient nutritional input. Okay. Whereas the environmental deprivation is the richness or poorness of environment, the surrounding environment of a child. Rich, stimulating environment will enhance the neuronal formation, neuronal connections, which will lead to better performance compared to those who are environmentally deprived. Okay. The second is objective versus subjective. Objective measurement is the material is, how should I put this? In objective terms, the materials are not there. For example, economic deprivation. Money is not there to buy food and eat. Okay, so it is an individual phenomenon that they don't have roti kapda makan, that types. Okay, whereas subjective is involves comparison with other group or other family or other individual, and then we compare and then despair. Okay, oh, this person has this, I don't have it. Okay, this is very similar to absolute and relative deprivation concept given by Gore and Runciman. According to them, when we see deprivation, we don't see it objectively. We see it very subjectively. Okay, so they classified deprivation in two types. One was absolute, which is objective, which is also, you can say it is objective deprivation, whereas the basic needs are absent. Okay, housing facility is not there. They have to fight for 2 meals. They don't have, they cannot afford to put their children in school that way. Whereas relative deprivation is a very subjective concept when there is a comparison between what is available with us and what is available with others, either as an individual or as group. Okay. For example, if you are living in South Delhi area, so they have big flats and big cars compared to someone who is living in Chandni Chowk, where they have small flats and there is no parking available. Okay, so if people start comparing these two groups within themselves, then they will come up with the assessment that they will come down to is relative deprivation. Okay, then relative deprivation is further classified into egoistic relative deprivation and fraternalistic relative deprivation. Egoistic is felt by an individual which is within that group. For example, if middle class people, they will start comparing themselves with the middle class people. Like one middle class person will start comparing it with other middle class person. Whereas the rich will compare themselves with that reference group. Okay. Whereas the fraternalistic relative deprivation is felt by a group with respect to another group. जो हमने साउथ दिल्ली और चांदनी चौक वाला एग्जाम्पल देखा, that is fraternalistic relative deprivation. Okay. Absolute deprivation we have seen already, that it is an objective construct and basic necessities for a healthy living are absent. Then we move on to, yes, this is the differentiation between relative deprivation and absolute deprivation. So relative is subjective, whereas absolute deprivation is objective economic concept. relative deprivation may not be a result of disadvantage. Okay, because relative deprivation is a subjective concept. Like, you will compare yourself. It is not necessary that you do not have, like, there is an absence of those material things, not necessary. For example, you have a car and your friend also has a car, but your friend has a better car. You are driving an Wagoner and your friend has a Kia or a Mercedes, then you will feel relatively deprived. Okay, even though you have both of you have car. Okay, so it may not be a result of disadvantage. Okay, whereas absolute deprivation is a result of disadvantage. There are basic necessities are only not there. Okay. Third point is relative deprivation leads to prejudice and stereotypes. Okay, so you might think that your friend is earning black money and that is how he is able to afford that Mercedes or Kia, whereas you are very honest, so you are earning white money and what you can afford you are buying. So what is happening? You're developing a prejudice towards your friend, and then you start stereotyping, like generalizing these prejudices, forming stereotypes that all the rich people earn money in bad ways. That is how they are able to afford expensive stuff, okay, which is not necessarily true. Whereas absolute deprivation leads to welfarism and empathy. So, we are always taught to look at someone who does not have that facility. So, why is that taught? So that it doesn't lead to prejudice and stereotypes, and you are humbled. And you also develop welfaristic tendencies and empathy towards the disadvantaged. Okay. Fourth point is relative deprivation may or may not be a fallout of absolute deprivation, whereas absolute deprivation is a fallout of objective economic criteria. This we have dealt with enough. Then we move on to prolonged deprivation. एक question आया था prolonged deprivation पे. Okay. So prolonged deprivation is the absolute deprivation over a period of time. If you see those who are like way below the poverty line, you will see they are caught up in this vicious cycle of poverty. So because they are poor, they are not able to afford nutrition, they are not able to provide nutrition and a good living to their children, so that children also grow up in poverty, and then their cognitive faculties are not well developed, so they are also mentally and physically malnourished, so they are not able to contribute that much towards employment, and then that whole cycle just keeps on continuing. So that is prolonged deprivation. Over the generations, or even for when an individual is seen from childhood to adulthood, over a period of time, there is absolute deprivation. People have to fight for their meals. So when it is over a period of time, over a period of generations, it is prolonged deprivation. Okay, and to prove this point, there were a few studies that happened. So one was Blackmore and Cooper. In 1970, what they did was they took two groups of kittens. One group of kittens was exposed only to vertical aspects of the furniture. Okay, there were no horizontal aspects to the furniture. Whereas the second group of kittens was exposed to horizontal aspects of the furniture. There were no vertical dimension. Okay, and they found out that the kittens, when they were interchanged, they could not adjust and adapt to the changed conditions. Like the kittens who were put into the vertical dimension, for the kittens who were in the vertical dimension group, they were put into the horizontal dimension furniture group. They were not able to adjust and adapt to the changed environment. So the same happened to the kittens who were put into the horizontal dimension group. When they were changed to vertical dimensions furniture group, they were not able to adjust. They were not able to detect the vertical edges of the furniture. So this experiment, it demonstrated that perception was plastic, like it is influenced by the environmental stimulation. Okay. And when the kittens were exposed to both the conditions, and when the kittens were exposed to both the conditions in which the furniture had both vertical and horizontal dimensions, because the kittens were young and the perception that was plastic, they were able to adjust like their perception. Okay, so they concluded that initially perception is plastic, and then they generalized it to whole brain being plastic. Okay.
Hello guys, before we start with the discussion, we just want to inform you that we have launched a very special and unique type of program which is called Excel Mains through the previous year's questions. In this program, we are going to cover the entire syllabus of GS paper 1, 2, 3 and 4. The philosophy behind this program is we are going to cover the syllabus not randomly but just by using or referring the previous year's questions themes. And the themes are extracted from the last 40 years of previous year's questions. There will be a live discussion, there will be a answer writing with the mentors, and the second program is the intense answer writing program which is called Samachar Vani Plus, in which there will be a weekly classes on 10 topics which are extremely important from the UPSC mains and prelims point of view. There will be an answer writing, there will be a questions given after each and every class based on those 10 topics. So even if you are a beginner, this is a good opportunity for you to begin with the answer writing. For any further queries, or if you wish to talk with a mentor, if you have any doubts, please drop us a message on the number given below. Thank you.
But then there was another case that was found out of Ginny, who, we don't know her original name, it was a pseudonym. Okay. She had an abusive father, and he thought that she had some mental problems, which is why he isolated her and he kept her tied to the bed in one room. Okay. He gave her minimum nutrition so that she could survive, but he did not give her love, he did not give her language skills, and he could not provide education, he did not rather provide education. So, and then at the age of 13, I think 11 or 13, she was found out. And then those child right activists, and clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, they tried to study her, to teach her language, to teach her basic social skills. And they found out that she could learn the social skills and non-verbal behavior or non-verbal aspects of language, but she could only develop very limited language. She could not form complete sentences. She could not hold long conversations. She could not extend sentences adding prepositions. Okay, her sentences were barely like 3-4 words, an assemblage of 3-4 words. So they found out that by the age of 11 to 13, plasticity of the brain reduces. Okay, and that was for kids. And then in adulthood, for adults, to understand the effect of deprivation, Agarwal and Tripathi in the 1980s, they did an experiment and they applied this prolonged deprivation scale to two groups, 50 students from India and 50 students from Nepal, and then they were counterbalanced, and then they applied this prolonged deprivation scale, and they found out that future orientation of the two groups, that vastly differed. Okay, so one group was the high prolonged deprivation group, and the other group was the low prolonged deprivation group. Okay, future orientation was that how individuals think about the future, anticipate future consequences, jobs, um, or amount of money they will be earning, how fulfilling their job will be, or how many, or where, in which field they would want to get a job. That is how they constructed the future orientation concept. And they found out that those who had high prolonged deprivation, their future orientation was lower compared to those who belonged to low prolonged deprivation group. So those who experienced less amount of deprivation, they had better future orientation in terms of getting a successful career and less chances of failure. They perceived it. Okay. So, thus, prolonged deprivation has both cognitive and perceptual, intellectual related, motivation related, personality related consequences. Now we move on to the types of deprivation. There's economic deprivation, there is social deprivation, cultural deprivation, cognitive deprivation. Okay. So economic deprivation में क्या होता है? There is lack of accessibility of resources or the inability to utilize the available resources, because so in economy there is always a give and take and everything has a value. So you need to pay that value in order to avail that resource. So that is absent. Okay. Social deprivation is a combination of factors that prevents a person from having easy and frequent access to many different aspects of the society. For example, because of stereotypes, prejudices, intermingling is absent. There is intermingling of different groups, of different religions, that is absent. So a community living, or the advantages, the benefits of community social support is absent. So that is social deprivation. Okay, the community doesn't come to help you when they know that you are from the disadvantaged background. Okay, or you yourself will not fall back on your community or the larger group of people to help you get out of that disadvantaged deprivation situation. Okay, cultural deprivation refers to substandard living and discrimination which prevents individuals from participating in their culture. Like Buddhist, there was a case study also, not a case study actually, an incident had happened. A very famous comedian in Maharashtra, so he was a Buddhist. Okay, he was from SC/ST caste, Buddhist, and he wanted to get Ganpati for Ganpati festival at his house, and he got a very nice organic murti, and he celebrated Ganesh festival. But then his community members, the Buddhist SC members, they started discriminating against him, and they condemned him openly for getting an idol to his house, because in Buddhism idol worship is not recognized and appreciated. So that is an example of cultural deprivation, wherein all three religions are indigenous religions and they share a lot of similarities, and nobody ideally should stop one from celebrating the festivals of the other. But it happened, and when it happens on a larger scale over a period of time, it just disturbs the harmony of the society. Okay, Then cognitive deprivation is similar to the faculties like the brain, spinal cord not being developed due to both. Firstly, material input like nutritious food and food is absent, and secondly, environmental stimulation is absent. Okay, so cognitive deprivation happens both because of genetics and environment deprivation. Okay. So deprivation is basically what? Deprivation is prolonged disadvantage, a phase of prolonged disadvantage. Okay. Disadvantage is, you can say, a temporary phenomena which can be overcome. But if the individual or the family or the group is not able to overcome, then it leads to deprivation. And why do we need to study it? One, because it is in the syllabus and questions are asked around 30 marks. Okay, so one is that, and second is we are going to be the most populous country in the coming years. So we have a huge human resource, and we need to channelize this human resource and its intellectual and mental capabilities in order to move them above, push them beyond thinking about just the basic survival needs and moving up the Maslow's needs hierarchy theory towards self-actualization. Okay, in that way only we will be able to have fruitful contribution from our human resource for our economic and social development. Also, thirdly, it will curb pocketed development that we have, and it will be more equitable throughout the country, throughout the now there are some states which are prosperous, some states which are backward. So it will be more unanimous, and it will lead to harmony in the society. It will not lead to class conflicts. Okay, so relative deprivation hai, it leads to stereotype prejudice, as we have seen, and if it is to an extreme, if we take it, then it leads to class conflict. Okay, so if we study and if we understand deprivation and disadvantage concept, we will be able to make policy changes and accordingly bring in a virtuous, harmonious cycle in the society. Okay, then we will move on to deprivation, which is nature-nurture argument, which is perennially present for each and every psychology concept, whether it is nature done or nurture done. Okay, so जो difference argument है, it is more of genetic, like genes. Because of the genes, there is difference in advantageous groups and those who are at a disadvantage and deprivation group. So J.P. Das had conducted an experiment on rich and poor students. Okay, so he took poor Harijan students and then he took rich Brahmin students, and then he assessed them on intelligence scale, and he found out that the poor Harijan students performed lower than the rich Brahmin students. Okay, but that according to him, that is not because there are genetic differences in them. Okay, because going a step ahead, what his colleagues did was they took these two groups and they randomly mixed them up again. Okay, but they placed similarly placed students. Like the middle class students were taken in one group and the rich students were taken in another group. Okay, here the Brahmin and Harijan difference was not made. And then they found out that students who had similar background, they performed similarly, irrespective of their caste. So this genetic difference like the genetic argument that Brahmins are genetically superior than the Harijans in terms of performance on intelligence scale was falsified or was not held true. Okay. The second argument is the deficit argument, which is focused more on everywhere. It says that due to environmental deficits, there is difference in the performance, which further says that, for example, poor families are not able to afford to give their children various toys which help them develop certain concepts like weight, understanding of weights, birds, different birds. They're not able to provide those books, whereas these facilities are provided by the rich to their kids, or someone who are comparatively well off. They'll bring books, they'll bring toys, they'll bring the toys that will make noise, or sing nursery rhymes. So all these are very stimulating for brain development. Okay, so this is what the deficit argument says, that environment may deficits have, because of which there is deprivation and there is difference in the performance. So now again, researchers came at a conflict. One gave the nurture argument, one gave the nature argument. So in 1973, J.P. Das gave a modified threshold hypothesis in which he reconciled this debate of nature and nurture. So he said that what he did was he established a threshold for intellectual ability in the students. Okay, in his experimental group, he established a threshold, and then he found that students who were above that threshold were less affected by their background or by their deprivation compared to the students who were below the threshold level. And so he found out that nature and nurture, that is ability and deprivation, both jointly influence the performance. Okay, so this was all for today, and in the coming classes we'll move on to consequences of deprivation and other topics.
Hello guys, before we start with the discussion, we just want to inform you that we have launched a very special and unique type of program which is called Excel Mains through the previous year's questions. In this program, we are going to cover the entire syllabus of GS paper 1, 2, 3 and 4. The philosophy behind this program is we are going to cover the syllabus not randomly but just by using or referring the previous year's questions themes. And the themes are extracted from the last 40 years of previous year's questions. There will be a live discussion, there will be a answer writing with the mentors, and the second program is the intense answer writing program which is called Samachar Vani Plus, in which there will be a weekly classes on 10 topics which are extremely important from the UPSC mains and prelims point of view. There will be an answer writing, there will be a questions given after each and every class based on those 10 topics. So even if you are a beginner, this is a good opportunity for you to begin with the answer writing. For any further queries, or if you wish to talk with a mentor, if you have any doubts, please drop us a message on the number given below. Thank you.